What we covered.
Is that Zalimin?
So the word,
And of course, we're in the fourth part of Surah Baqarah. The fourth part being foundations of Sharia, and the aspect of Sharia that we were discussing in these ayat are ayat dealing with fighting. So we started our last discussion with what is the natural disposition that we should have towards fighting itself. So we went into Surah 22, ayat 39 and 40, where the context in which these ayat were revealed were in the context for preparation for the Battle of Badr. So you had the Sahaba who were conditioned to practicing sabr, which is what they did in Makkah. They had all forms of oppression done to them: economic oppression, physical oppression, emotional oppression from family members. So they had all of these different forms of oppression done to them. They weren't allowed to pray in front of the Kaaba and so on and so forth. And so all of a sudden, they had to be given permission to fight. So the first thing here is that the default state is to not fight, and if you want to fight, then it's done under circumstances where you have to be given permission. So then the permission that was given to fight in this context was specifically for fi sabilillah, which has a lot of which has a specific set of situations in which that is allowed, in which you can call it fi sabilillah. So ayat 39 actually answers the question of who is considered one fighting for fi sabilillah are specifically those folks who were evicted from their homes because they took Allah as their ilah as opposed to anybody else. So if someone is being evicted from homes for other reasons, ethnicity, other belief systems or nationality, that permission to fight for that context is a separate issue. But if you want to call it fi sabilillah, it has to be specifically for the reason that you're being evicted from your home and you're being oppressed because you take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as your ilah. And then within ayat 39, there's also some information about if you are in a position of superiority and you're inherently corrupt, then know that one of two fates will happen. Either you will be destroyed, as happened to multiple prophets that came before, or you'll be replaced by a nation that may be better. And so then we went on to discuss, going to a little further beyond the ayahs that we're going to be discussing, that we discussed last week, and we went to ayah 216, Surah Baqarah, where what should be our innate, inherent predisposition towards fighting. So as opposed to the common notion that folks have that Islam is a religion of, not a religion of peace, and these are just all militant people who spread the word by the sword, so on and so forth. This ayah basically tells us, which is very interesting, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what our inherent disposition should be, as He does for everything else. And He tells us that your inherent disposition, even though you may be at the front line of battle, that your inherent disposition should be to hate fighting, right? But it's still enjoined upon you. So that as opposed to the things that we see I have a lot of patients who, are Marines and so on and so forth. These guys are basically trained to become killers and actually enjoy killing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that even those folks that are at the front line, their inherent disposition is to hate it, but do it because it's for a purpose that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them the permission to fight. Now, going back to the ayahs that we discussed last week, ayah 190. So you've been given the permission to fight. Now, who should you fight against?
Sorry, can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Just needed some clarification. Because you said that this is sort of and this came up last week and it's being summarized again. I needed some clarification. Is that describing the nature of the Sahaba and therefore we should emulate them, or is this actually a prescription that this is what you're supposed to be?
It's a prescription for the Sahaba.
So, but the Sahaba inherently disliked fighting. It seemed like is what it said here.
Yeah, I'd suggest that it was the Sahaba who convinced the Prophet, peace be upon him, to go fight. Mm-hmm. Right. The default state among the tribes. I feel like I said this. Oh, maybe it was earlier today. Okay, so the default state of the tribes in Arabia was a state of war, unless there was a treaty. So the point was that everybody was ready to fight. Right. A way to think about this is that the prescription is to dislike fighting, Okay? But above that, but it's not to disempower you. Above that is the obedience to Allah Ta'ala.
That's
Right? So if he's telling you to stand and fight, then you're absolutely going to do it because he's telling you to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and so then moving on with further stuff on Ayah 190. So yes, you're giving permission to fight, and who should you fight against? You should, first of all, you should fight people who expelled you from those lands, and so you're not the aggressor. The aggression was already done to you, and you're basically fighting those who fought you and who oppressed you. So that's Ayah 190. And Ayah 191, this is the ayah that has been hijacked by both Muslims and non-Muslims alike, and so we'll get into that in a little bit. But the wording of the ayah is, the gist of that is, that if you get into the fight, go all the way, kill them wherever you find them, drive them out of places where they drove you out, fight them at the haram if they attack you, and if they attack you at the haram, you're allowed to kill them. So this is kind of the ayah, and that's been hijacked by obviously the media. Kill them wherever you find them, suggesting that this is a militant religion and so on. Now, with respect to the curbs and the limitation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set, and we have to understand this in the context of what this was, when this was revealed, to really get the breadth of why this strong wording is used for the Sahaba. Remember that these people were, again, under all sorts of oppression when they're in Makkah. They migrated to Medina, and the Kaaba is being kept hostage by the kuffar, and this is part of the mission of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he has to purify the Kaaba and have the deen, the Islam prevail. And so you have a situation where the entire time the Sahaba were asked to be subdued, have patience, have sabr, and now they're being given permission to fight. Yes, they're being given permission to fight. They can go, and yes, they will reach the Kaaba, and this fitna that's there is so horrible that they're going to capitalize on everything that they can. So the notion at that time was that you can't fight in front of the haram. So they would capitalize on that, because even in pre-Islamic area, it was thought to be such a sacred place that fighting couldn't occur there. So if you reach there and you're attacked, you're under attack, then you can attack back and you can kill them, right? And if you get to that point, then this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually sets limitation for them. So you're revved up and you're emotionally charged and you're ready to kill, and you get to the point and you're ready to take over, and if they say ceasefire, you have to stop. This is obedience. This is taqwa. This is what Mohi was talking about towards the end of his last discussion, that all of these ayat and all of these injunctions are given with the presumption that you have taqwa, so that will prevail, your obedience to Allah will prevail, and not your angst and your revved up nature and your anger towards these oppressors. So that the injunction to fight fi sabilillah, that requires you to meet certain conditions. That condition, of course, that you're evicted from your home because of this specific reason. And then when you fight, you're only fighting those who oppressed you. Off limits are civilians. Off limits are those people who are not actively engaged in attacking you. So there is this other part of the ayah, fitna is worse than killing. We spent some time talking about that because, again, this has been hijacked by folks as well, as we know with the ISIS crisis and all the other stuff that's going on. So Umar went into what fitna actually is, and it is etymologically it means to purify gold. But the gist of the meaning that we should walk away with is fitna is basically oppression, anarchy, and chaos. So with respect to the ISIS taking on this ideology that we are being oppressed, we have fitna that's being done to us, and hence fitna is worse than killing, and we're going to utilize this ayah, hijack it in a way, and have it be our support for doing what we want to do, which is kill innocent people. Obviously, there's a lot of problems with that, because again, it's very clear from these ayat that you don't kill innocent people. You're only killing people that are attacking you, and again, ayah 192. If they stop, Allah is all forgiving, and if they seek permission for forgiveness, you don't have the right to take that permission away from them, as the Sahaba, And if you go beyond the limits that Allah said that Allah has set forth for you as a Sahaba, and you kill a Christian or you kill a Jew, then you're going to be the one that's at fault, because you would think inherently that it's a Sahaba, but actually the Sahaba is actually in error there because he's not obedient to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if they stop, they absolutely if the oppressors stop, then you have to stop as well, and you can't go beyond the limits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set forth. So in Ayah 193, fight them until there's no fitna, and the deen is for Allah. These are the principles of war. Ayah 194 is about retribution. Again, and with pre-Islamic Arabia, the sacred months are months that were known that you couldn't fight. So this fitna is so severe. This fitna is so severe that they would capitalize on this. And so when they say fight till the end and get rid of this fitna, is because that's the nature of the fitna that was there. That these people would capitalize on the fact that we can attack them during the sacred months and we'll be okay. So if you're being attacked in the sacred months, the injunction is that you can't fight back and you can attack them during those sacred months. We ended our discussion with the story of this misinformed kid that falls into the hands of Alaki and eventually dies. And then we talked about radicalism and how radicalism has affected the impassioned youth to pick up arms, leave their homes, and go fight for fi sabilillah. And of course, there's a lot of problems with that because, as we discussed last week, that the rights that you have with your neighbors and your local community is more than the rights that you have, for fighting overseas. And of course, you guys, ISIS is hijacking this fitna is worse than killing and recruiting, these youth to help out when there's no backing for that. And I think the last thing that we had really discussed is we just need to be more vocal with youth and falling prey to these to radicalism altogether.
Okay, good. Alhamdulillah.
Good.
This injunction,